Well, after 9.5 hours of deliberations, a jury convicted the Teflon Don, Donald Trump, of all 34 counts of his criminal charges. Even I have to admit that I was surprised at how quickly the verdict came back. Let's do a deep dive into the ramifications of Donald Trump's criminal conviction. What's good, people? Well, like I said in my previous discussion, the Teflon Don, Donald Trump, had a very good reason to be concerned about this most recent criminal trial involving Stormy Daniels and the hush money. Like I said before, it's one thing when you're being prosecuted in a political tribunal where half the jury are your peers and political constituents. It's another thing when you go into a court of law and you have a case tried by a jury of your peers or by an impartial judge. When that's happened, he has seen himself be hammered with back-to-back $1 million verdicts in civil cases against him, and now a conviction on all 34, every single count of falsifying business records in the city of Manhattan. And now he has been branded a criminal, a convicted felon. There are so many burning questions everyone has, and let's get right to it. But the first thing I want to do is comment on his failure to testify. Now, of course, in a trial, you can't comment on the defendant's failure to testify, but we're not in a trial. And I want to be clear that I am not in any way expressing any issues with a defendant's right to exercise his Fifth Amendment right not to testify at a trial. It's constitutionally guaranteed. It's an important right. I completely respect that. However, we have a case where a defendant could barely keep his mouth shut at any point during this trial. He's given almost daily interviews on the courthouse steps. He's posting on social media. He's tweeting about the case. He's talking about the judge. He's talking about the prosecutor. He's talking about the process. He has problems complying with a basic gag order. He gets indignant with the whole idea that the judge might infringe upon his First Amendment rights to free speech and express himself. Fine. So then, during the trial, when he's actually got the opportunity to testify and tell the jury his truth, what does he do? He takes a fifth. That is comical, and granted, again, that's his right not to testify, but I think it's comical that for someone that was so offended by their, infringement on their First Amendment rights and talking every day and giving interviews on the courthouse steps and got so much to say, when he has a chance to say in front of a jury, clams up. The main question people have is, as a result of the conviction, is Trump disqualified from serving as president? And the answer is no. While the 14th Amendment of the Constitution does in fact have a clause that states certain individuals are prohibited from serving in public office, there is nothing that prevents a person with a felony conviction from serving as the President of the United States. So, he's got that going for him. Everyone also wants to know, if Trump was reelected president, could he pardon himself? Well, I'm certain that he would if he could, just so we're clear. However, the answer is no. While the President of the United States does have almost unlimited pardon authority when it comes to federal convictions or federal crimes, a president has no authority whatsoever for individuals convicted on state crimes in state court. So he cannot issue a pardon for this offense because he was convicted in state court. The only person with the authority to grant him a pardon will be the governor of the state of New York. Good luck with that. Everyone also wants to know, can Trump still vote? Well, the law varies from state to state regarding whether or not a person with a felony conviction can still vote in an election. However, where Trump lives, in the great state of Florida, a person with a felony conviction is prohibited from participating or voting in an election. So I think it is somewhat ironic that he could actually run for president, but he could not actually cast a vote for himself as president in the state where he lives. People are also wondering, how much prison time is he potentially facing? Well, the charges for which he was convicted have no mandatory minimum and a maximum sentence of up to 4 years in prison. So for 34 counts, he's technically facing about 136 years in prison. Okay, now realistically, that's just not going to happen. Okay, I mean, for any defendant that's convicted with multiple offenses based on the same set or of circumstances or facts, even if they're convicted on multiple charges, they're typically given what's called concurrent time, which means the time runs together on any sentence you get, as opposed to consecutive time, which means, the time runs from back to back. So, although from a technical standpoint, he is facing 136 years, that's not realistic. He's facing technically at most 4 years on each count. So I think realistically, the realistic time frame that he's looking at is 0 to 4 years in prison. Again, even if he got that on all the charges, it'd be all run concurrent. And of course, the billion-dollar question, will he receive time in prison? Well, I gotta call it like I see it, and I'm gonna say yes. While I'm certain he's not gonna get the 4-year maximum that the penalty carries, I do believe the judge will sentence him to a period of incarceration, and that means prison time. And let's talk about that a little bit, because some people may say, well, something, that's not fair. It's his first offense. He's not convicted of a violent crime. He didn't physically hurt anyone. He shouldn't go to prison. And those are great arguments to make, and his lawyer will make them, and they're great points for the judge to consider. But there's certain other factors that have to be taken into account. And first, generally, a defendant that chooses to go to trial and gets convicted by a jury, typically, if they're convicted, the judge is going to sentence them to prison time. Now, I want to be clear. It's not deemed as being punished for exercising your right to a trial, but a person that pleads guilty gets certain benefits. They get consideration for accepting responsibility for their conduct. They get consideration for saving the court and the state the time and money and resources necessary to prosecute them at trial. So they get those considerations that a person that goes to trial does not get. So it's not punishment, you just don't get the same consideration and basically discounts that a person gets when they plead guilty. And something else needs to be taken into account in this case. And it's not just for Trump, but for any defendant in a criminal case. Throughout this entire trial, we have a defendant that basically showed his ass. He constantly attacked the judge. He attacked the courtroom staff. He attacked the prosecutors, attacked the judge's daughter. I mean, it was a constant daily thing. It was that disrespect for the court, that disrespect for the process. I mean, I don't care what kind of court you're in. If you're in trial for a speeding ticket in traffic court and you show you're behind every day in court and you get convicted, don't think you can walk in front of the judge and ask for him to cut you a break at sentencing. That's just not going to happen. And trust me, I know what it's like to be in a long trial and feel like you're getting screwed by a judge. I mean, I've been there. I've had no sleep. I'm going to court every day, working my butt off. Judge is shutting me down every time I open my mouth. He's ruling against me, ruling against my objections, throwing out my evidence. And trust me, I know that it sucks. But when that happens, I still have the presence of mind to say, thank you, Your Honor. Please note my objection for the record. Because the last thing I want to happen is the judge to be upset with me because he thinks I'm being a jerk or being disrespectful and ultimately use his discretion to hurt me or hurt my client, more like it, with one of his rulings. So you got to keep that kind of stuff in mind. If you're a defendant in a criminal case, that is not the time to try to be the alpha male in the courtroom. The judge has ultimate authority over you, whether you like it or not. And yeah, you can file an appeal, but like I tell all my clients, you're sitting in jail doing that appeal. I mean, you're sitting in prison while that appeal is going on. So you got to keep that in mind. It is so important to manage your conduct when you're involved in a trial. Unfortunately for the Teflon Don, this cat is running through his 9 lives. He's not done yet. He still has 3 more criminal prosecutions that are pending. He's got the Georgia election interference case. He's got the election interference prosecution in DC, and he has the federal classified documents trial. So he's got a long road ahead, and he's got some thinking he's going to have to do. So, do you think Trump should get prison time? Do me a favor, post your comments, and call it like you see it. That's it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. There are so many topics to talk about. I appreciate you taking the time to join me on this legal deep dive, but please subscribe, leave me your comments, and tell me the legal issues you want to talk about. You can find me on YouTube, social media, and your favorite podcast platform. Until then, that's it.